It started with a humming sound, weak but persistent, like an angry mosquito that refused to die. I wiped the sweat off my brow and looked up from my tomato plant. There it was, black, shiny, and hovering right over my field, its little camera lens tilting downward, like a nosy neighbor peeking over a fence. I grabbed my shotgun on instinct, but then I heard another buzz. And another. Within seconds, 4 more drones appeared, circling like vultures. At first, I thought some reckless kids were having fun. Maybe someone lost control of their fancy device. But then I saw the stickers on them. Homeowner Association property. My stomach dropped. There was only one person crazy enough to do this. Karen. Karen wasn't just an ordinary homeowner association president. No, she was a dictator in yoga pants. A walking neighborhood surveillance system with too much free time and too little sense. She had a permanent frown, a voice that could strip paint, and an unwavering belief that the entire world needed to follow her rules. Unfortunately for her, didn't live under her jurisdiction. My farm sat just outside the homeowner association's grasp, but that never stopped Karen from trying. A week ago, she had left a note in my mailbox, written in her signature, passive, aggressive, cursive. Dear resident, the state of your property is concerning homeowner association rules must be upheld for community beautification. Please ensure your farm meets the proper aesthetic standards. I crumpled the note and tossed it. She had no legal power here, and I figured she'd get bored and move on. I had underestimated her level of insanity. Now here she was, watching me from above, like some budget version Big Brother. I put my hands on my hips and glared at the drones. You've got to be kidding me. One of them tilted slightly, as if acknowledging my disbelief. I reached for a rock and lobbed it. The drone dodged effortlessly. The others hovered like menacing hummingbirds, their cameras zooming in. My blood boiled. This was beyond annoying. It was an invasion of privacy. Determined to get answers, I stomped off toward the homeowner association office, a shiny little building that looked like it was built solely to house unnecessary rules and overpaid committee members. I didn't even make it inside before Karen stepped out onto the front porch, her arms crossed, an infuriatingly smug look on her face. "Ah, Jake," she said, voice dripping with fake sympathy. "I was hoping you'd stop by. Have you seen our new homeowner association security drones? They're quite remarkable, aren't they?" "Security?" I scoffed. "Karen, those things are spying on my farm. I don't even live in your homeowner association." She waved a manicured hand casually. "Your property borders our community, and as homeowner association president, I have a duty to ensure everyone follows aesthetic guidelines. We would not want property values to decrease. Now would we, lady, grow crop? Unless you've got a complaint with tomatoes? I don't see how this concerns you." Karen sighed exaggeratedly, as if I were the unreasonable one. "It's not just the crops, Jake. It's the appearance of your farm. The equipment, that fencing, oh dear, those old tires by the barn. Simply unacceptable." I stared at her, trying to decide if she was actually serious or just mentally unstable. "So let me get this straight. You think some tires on my land are an eyesore, so you're sending drones to bother me?" "It's not harassment," she said, all innocence. "It's compliance supervision." I clenched my jaw. "Turn them off." She smiled sweetly. "I'm afraid I can't do that. Homeowner association regulations." I took a deep breath, forcing myself not to yell. "Let me explain something to you. Karen, you don't own my land. You don't control what I do. And if those drones keep coming, they're going to start falling out of the sky real fast." Her eyes narrowed. "Are you threatening homeowner association property?" I grinned. "Nope, just warning you." She gave a huff, spun on her heel, and marched back inside, slamming the door behind her. I stood there for a moment, fists clenched, trying to figure out my next move. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. By the time I got home, the drones were still there. If anything, they seemed closer, hovering just a few feet above my crops. I grabbed my phone, did a quick search, and smirked. It was time to retaliate. The next morning, I paid a visit to my neighbor Earl, a retired Air Force engineer with a workshop full of gadgets that technically shouldn't be allowed. When I told him about the drones, he let out a deep chuckle. "She's using consumer-grade surveillance toys," he said. "Nothing fancy. You could take them down with a rock if you're lucky." "Tried that," I admitted. "Didn't work." Earl scratched his chin, then grinned. "Ever hear of a signal jammer?" An hour later I was back on my farm, setting up a small black box Earl had lent me. According to him, it would scramble the drone signals within a certain radius, causing them to lose connection. I flicked it on and waited. The first drone wobbled, then with a sputter, it spiraled downward, crashing into the dirt with a pathetic little plop. I laughed. The second drone went down moments later, followed by the third and fourth. It was like watching mechanical FLIs get swatted out of the sky. By the time the fifth one hit the ground, I was wiping tears from my eyes. The next morning, Karen was back. This time, she didn't bother with pleasantries. She stormed onto my land red-faced and angry, her phone clutched in her hand like a weapon. "You," she screeched. "You destroyed homeowner association property." I smirked. "You mean the illegal surveillance drones?" "Yeah, they had a little failure." Her jaw tightened. "Do you have any idea how much those cost?" "Nope. Don't care." She took a deep breath, visibly trying to control her rage. "This isn't over. You will be hearing from the homeowner association's legal team." "Good luck with that," I said, because last I checked, spying on private property is illegal. "But hey, me, your lawyers will love explaining why you were recording my land without permission." Karen opened her mouth, then shut it again for the first time. She looked hesitant. I could almost see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out her next move. I smiled, knowing full well what was coming next. Karen wasn't the type to give up. No, this was just the start, and if she wanted a war, I was more than ready to fight. Earl handed me a beer as we sat on his porch watching the sunset over the field. The first round of drones had been easy enough to take down, but we both knew Karen wouldn't stop there. She was too determined, too obsessed with control to let it go. Sure enough, as I took a sip, my phone buzzed a notification from my outdoor cameras. More drones, larger ones. I let out a groan. "She upgraded." Earl chuckled, shaking his head. "Figured she would. Probably went crying to her homeowner association board about her damaged property. I bet she convinced them to double the funding." I stared at the screen. The new drones hovered higher than before, out of easy reach. Their movements were smoother, more precise. These were not cheap consumer-grade models. Karen had gone all out. "She's going to keep pushing," I muttered. "I need to shut this down before she gets it in her head to start flying those things inside my dim house." Earl took a long sip of his beer before grinning. "Then it's time to step up our strategy." The next morning, I set up a few more jammers around the property. Earl had given me a stronger model, one designed to cover a wider radius. I placed one near the barn, another by the chicken coop, and one in the middle of the field. If Karen wanted to keep playing, she was about to lose big. The first drone appeared just after noon. It hovered cautiously, as if testing the waters. Then another joined it. Within minutes, 3 more arrived, circling like mechanical hawks. I turned on the jammers, crossed my arm, and waited. The results were immediate. One drone wobbled violently, then spun out of control, plummeting straight into my cornfield. The second one jerked to the left, its camera tilting wildly before it crashed into a fence post. The third dropped so fast it looked like someone had swatted it with an invisible hand. By the time the fourth and fifth went down, I was grinning ear to ear. Then I heard the shouting. I turned to see Karen storming up my driveway, her face redder than a sunburnt tomato. She was waving her phone like it was some kind of legal weapon, her voice shrill with rage. "You absolute menace," she screeched. "You think you can just destroy homeowner association property without consequences?" I leaned against the fence, looking unbothered. "Your property was trespassing." Again, she stomped her foot. "Those drones are legally authorized surveillance devices." I raised an eyebrow. "Authorized? By who?" "You, because last I checked, You don't have authority over my land. Karen took a deep breath, clearly trying to regain some control. This is about community standards, Jay. Your farm is an eyesore. It brings down property values. I laugh. An eyesore. Lady, this is a farm. Farms have dirt. Farms have equipment. Farms don't follow your suburban princess handbook. She glared at me, her nostrils flaring. This isn't over. She turned on her heel and marched back to her car, slamming the door hard enough to make the whole vehicle shake as she sped off. I knew this wasn't just about property values anymore. This was personal. Earl was waiting for me back at the house, shaking his head. She's not done, he said simply. Yeah, I agreed, cracking my fingers. Neither am I. The next evening, I noticed something odd. The jammers were still on, but no new drones had appeared. It was too quiet, too easy. Then, just as I was about to head inside, I saw it. A single drone, bigger than any of the others, was hovering at the edge of my property. It wasn't moving, just floating there, almost like it was waiting for something. I frowned and stepped closer. That's when I saw the logo on the side. It wasn't a homeowner association drone. This one was professional quality. My stomach sank. Karen had escalated. I ran inside and called Earl. He answered on the first ring. I see it, he said, before I could even speak. What the hell is it? I asked. Earl sighed. That's a private security drone. Then she must have hired someone. I clenched my jaw. Can the jammer take it down? Earl hesitated. Maybe, but if she paid for top-tier monitoring, it might have countermeasures. These things are built to resist disruptions. I watched the drone, my mind racing. Karen had officially lost it. She wasn't just spying on my farm anymore. She was bringing in outside forces. Well, I said after a moment, guess it's time for Plan B. Earl laughed. You got a Plan B? I smirked. Yeah, and it's going to be exciting. The next day, we got to work. Earl had an old friend who owed him a favor, someone who knew how to reroute signals instead of just jamming them. We set up a makeshift signal hijacker, something designed to take control of the drone instead of just knocking it out of the sky. By the time Karen's new toy showed up again that evening, we were ready. I flipped the switch. The drone wobbled, twitched, then suddenly turned it, hovered for a moment before taking off straight toward Karen's house. Earl cheered. Hell, yeah, look at that sucker go. I watched through the binoculars as the drone, now fully under our control, began circling Karen's perfectly manicured backyard. It dipped low, knocking over one of her decorative lawn gnomes. Then it turned toward her patio, knocking a cup off her outdoor table. Karen came running outside, her face contorted in horror. She started waving her arms, trying to shoo it away like an angry goose. But we weren't done yet. With a quick adjustment, Earl sent the drone straight into her swimming pool. The splash was spectacular. Karen stood motionless, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then, as if realizing what had just happened, she let out an ear-splitting scream. Earl and I were laughing so hard we could barely breathe. But deep down I knew this wasn't the end. Karen wasn't the type to let something like this go. If she was willing to spend this much money on drones, she'd come back with something even worse. Still, I wasn't worried because I had a feeling that when she did, I'd be more than ready. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of sirens. I groaned, already knowing who was behind it before I even looked out the window. Sure enough, 2 police cruisers were parked in my driveway, and Karen stood beside them with her arms crossed, her face twisted into a victorious smirk. She looked like she had just won the lottery and was about to collect her reward. I stepped outside, wiping my hands on my jeans as one of the officers, a guy named Deputy Wilkins, approached me. He had dealt with Karen's nonsense before, so the tired look in his eyes wasn't unexpected. Morning, Jake, he said, sighing. Karen here says you've been destroying her property and engaging in cyber attacks against the homeowner association. I blinked. Cyber attacks? Karen cut in before Wilkins could respond. Yes, he used some kind of illegal gadget to hijack my security drone and crash it into my pool. That's destruction of private property, and I demand he be arrested immediately. Wilkins pinched the bridge of his nose. Karen, we've been over this. You were using drones to spy on private property. That's forbidden, Karen. Gasped like she had just been slapped. It was for the good of the community. His farm is an eyesore, and I was collecting evidence of his violations. I snorted. Violations of what? Your personal sense of style? Karen's eyes narrowed. This isn't over. Jake, I will take legal action. Wilkins looked at me, then at Karen, then sighed again. Karen, unless you've got actual evidence of a crime, there's nothing we can do. Karen's smug expression faltered. But nothing he can do, Wilkins repeated slower. This time stop wasting police time. Karen let out an indignant huff and stomped off, getting into her car and racing out of my driveway. So fast, she nearly took out my mailbox. Wilkins shook his head. You know she ain't going to let this go, right? Oh, I know, I said, watching the dust settle. She's just getting started. That night, I spotted something new. Another drone, but this one was different. It was bigger than the others, and it wasn't alone. Two more flanked it, moving in perfect harmony. These were not Karen's usual toys. She had upgraded again. I groaned. Oh, come on. Earl was already at my place, sipping his beer on my porch when he saw the drones. He let out a low whistle. Damn, she went all in this time. I pulled out my phone and zoomed in. Looks advanced. Earl chuckled. I got something for that. I raised an eyebrow. You always have something for everything. He grinned. That's what makes life interesting. We went into his workshop and he pulled out a case, flipping it open to reveal a device that looked like a futuristic rifle. This, he said proudly, is a high-powered electromagnetic pulse emitter. One squeeze of the trigger, and anything electronic within range shuts off. I grinned. I like it. Earl handed it over. Just be careful. It's got a wide radius, so don't go aiming it at your tractor unless you want to restart the damn thing. I walked back outside, took aim at the lead drone and fired. The effect was immediate. The drone sputtered, twitched, then dropped like a rock. The two others followed, spiraling down in a chaotic mess of sparks and broken parts. One of them landed in the creek with a splash. The other crashed right into Karen's precious white picket fence. Earl let out a loud laugh. Oh, she's going to be furious. I didn't have to wait long to find out. The next morning Karen was back. This time, she wasn't alone. She had brought an entire crew from the home owner association, including a couple of guys in suits who looked way too serious for something as stupid as a drone fight. She marched up to me, pointing an angry finger. You have crossed the line this time, Jake. I folded my arms. Oh, and how's that? She gestured dramatically to the broken drone on her fence. These were top-of-the-line surveillance drones, and you illegally disabled them. I have legal representation now, and I am filing a lawsuit. One of the suited men stepped forward, adjusting his tie. Mr. Jacobson, my name is Richard Calloway. I represent the Homeowner Association's legal team. We have reason to believe you have been engaging in unlawful activity, including destruction of property and interference with community monitoring measures. I stared at him. Security measures. Those things were spying on me. Calloway remained stoic. The Homeowner Association reserves the right to monitor properties to ensure rules. I smirk. You mean properties within the Homeowner Association's jurisdiction, which, in case you forgot, I'm not in. Calloway hesitated. Karen's face tightened in frustration. It doesn't matter. I will not let you make a mockery of this community. I took a step forward, lowering my voice just enough to make sure everyone heard me. Karen, do you know what's illegal? She folded her arms. What? I pointed at the remains of her drone. Unauthorized surveillance, privacy violations, stalking, trespassing, all of which you've been doing for weeks. Karen's mouth opened, then shut. Calloway shifted uneasily. I grinned. And you know what's funny? I've got all the footage your drones recorded. Everything, including where they crashed and how they were on my land without authorization. Earl, who had been quietly filming the whole thing, held up his phone. I got it. All right. Here. Karen's face paled. I cut her off. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to Take your fancy lawyer and your little homeowner association cult, and you're going to walk away. Because if you don't, I'll be the one filing a lawsuit. And trust me, Karen, I will succeed. Silence. Karen's hands trembled as she clenched her fists. The homeowner association board members whispered among themselves. Calloway cleared his throat. I believe it would be in everyone's best benefit to avoid further legal disputes. Karen turned on him, eyes burning. You work for me. You're supposed to be on my side. Calloway adjusted his tie. I represent the homeowner association, and frankly, Mrs. Atkinson, this is not a case we can afford to lose. Karen looked like she was about to burst. Then without another word, she spun on her heel and stormed off, her entourage awkwardly following behind. Earl let out a low whistle. Well, that was entertaining. I chuckled. Yeah, but I doubt she's done for good. Turns out I was wrong. A month later, the homeowner association voted Karen out as president after discovering she had redirected thousands of dollars into her drone surveillance project. She had no choice but to sell her house and leave the neighborhood completely. And the best part? I bought her old house at auction. Earl helped me turn it into a farm supply store. We hung up a sign that read, Karen's Exile, Feed and Supply. Every time I walk past it, I can't help but smile, because no matter how much control she thought she had, at the end of the day, she failed. And I got the last victory.